What is it about comedians ending up behind some of the best works of drama and horror these days? I'm not saying comedians are any less talented than non-comedy entertainers, but you've got to admit it feels strange each time it happens. Think of Jim Carrey's dramatic roles, like in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or Jordan Peele's modern horror classics Get Out, Us, and Nope. Practically every major SNL cast member has done something steering closer to drama than comedy that's often praised as their best work. Bill Hader in Barry, Pete Davidson in The King of Staten Island, Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller in Meyerowitz Stories, Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. The list goes on, which leads me to Melissa McCarthy's own tragically underwatched contribution to the group, 2018's Can You Ever Forgive Me? It's based on the memoir of the same name by biographer Lee Israel, biographer and eventual letter forger, the latter of which is what the plot revolves around. Israel's fall from grace as a celebrated writer into financial ruin, as she turns to forging letters from famous authors by accurately imitating their writing style. This is another Moon situation, in that calling this underwatched isn't to say that people don't like the film. On the contrary, McCarthy and her co-star Richard E. Grant were deservedly nominated for acting Oscars, Golden Globes, and BAFTAs, and the writers got an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Despite this, not many people actually watched it. It barely made its $10 million budget back at the box office, and I'm yet to encounter someone else in real life who's seen it, besides those I've forced to watch it under threat. It's okay, they agreed with me in the end. Those people are really missing out. McCarthy absolutely disappears into the curmudgeonly role of Israel from the first scene. Her physicality and tone is so complete that you only get the chance to be wowed at her portrayal once the credits roll and the illusion is over. Richard E. Grant simultaneously pulls off charming and pitiful as drinking buddy and partner in crime Jack Hawk. They expertly tightrope walk a tone that is equal parts cheekily funny and quietly sad. Writers Nicole Holofcener and Jeff Whitty more than earned their Oscar nods with some pitch-perfect characterization. Israel and Hawk are, to me, the most compelling kind of literary characters. They're flawed, fatally so, and yet they are completely sympathetic because their flaws are relatively pedestrian. They're not struggling with gods and monsters, but with their own pride in the face of a reality that changed and left them behind. They're fully aware of these flaws, but find themselves unable to change, whether that's through stubbornness or just not knowing how to start. It may be hard to respect them for their crimes and their caustic natures, sure, but it'd be harder not to empathize with them for their disillusionment with a crapsack world and the search for meaning within it. I've also got to give a huge hand to them for a story where all three main characters are queer and the plot isn't about dealing with being queer. They're just openly gay and it's fine. And two of them are women who laugh at the idea of failing the Bechdel test. It's great to have stories that talk about the lived experiences of marginalized and oppressed groups and their struggles, and we should absolutely shine a spotlight on those that give a voice to the voiceless. But sometimes I want to watch a movie where a character is black and they're just black and no one mentions it, like it's irrelevant to the story. So why did Can You Ever Forgive Me slay with the critics, but not reach every audience and become a respected household name? A comparison for the film that feels appropriate is Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can, released 16 years earlier. Both are crime biopics with sympathetic protagonists based on famous fraudsters. Can You Ever Forgive Me is essentially Catch Me If You Can for introverts. But while Forgive Me is equal, if not better than Catch Me in almost every metric, it's a fraction as beloved. Well, I say almost because there's one thing it couldn't possibly win on, and it's the one thing that prevented it from being universally adored.
Not exactly hot and sexy, as you like to say.
It's just a fact that if you make a rise and fall story of a young white man, played by 20-something Leonardo DiCaprio no less, using his ingenuity to con airlines and live a lavish lifestyle, traveling the world and evading police at every turn, it's gonna have more mass appeal. Like, airline reputations are so bad now, we're pretty certain Satan created the industry to make bees feel bad. How can the story of an old alcoholic cat lady who just about makes rent by selling forged letters of 20th century playwrights you've never heard of possibly compete? Spielberg undoubtedly knows how to dazzle, and he plays up the dashing rogue type in Frank to the point where you don't even think of him as in the wrong, even though he absolutely is. He wasn't a folk hero fighting the power, he was a greedy kid. I do love that film, it's supremely entertaining from start to finish, but can I relate to Frank? He never struggles with anything except avoiding reprisal for his own crimes. His criminal motivations are shallow at best, amounting mostly to a sense of entitlement to the rich lifestyle he enjoyed as a child. wild. His actions, like pretending to be a doctor, border on sociopathic in his willingness to place others in harm's way for profit and thrills. These things and more make him extremely unrelatable, which isn't in itself a bad thing, but without a human character to anchor it, the movie is left hollow, like a sugary snack, providing excitement but never nourishing you in any way. And yes, I know I'm being uncharitable here. Frank is a more complex character than someone who wants to be wealthy for its own sake. He largely blames his family's financial downfall as the cause of his parents' divorce, which also forced him into isolation as they slipped into a lower economic class. His father taught him pretty much only one way to survive, by conning people, and he repeatedly falls back on that, especially once he learns he's being hunted by the FBI. It's clear that a primary goal of his was getting his parents back together so they can once again be a happy, wealthy, nuclear family, and we see him yearn for that time and again throughout the film. But it's that dazzle that makes me discount all of that in my opinion of his character. So much time and attention is devoted to his successes and the comedic ways he outwits Carl. He's a romantic hero. You don't judge him, you envy him, in the same way that The Wolf of Wall Street completely forgets that it's telling a cautionary tale for several hours. Catch Me never really criticizes Frank for his flaws. We barely see glimpses of the after effects of his actions and the lives he's surely ruined. Even the reprisals he does receive for his crimes are glossed over. Meanwhile, Forgive Me never tries to convince you that Lee's crimes were mostly fun and games and no one was really hurt along the way. The film wears on its sleeve that Lee's actions are the expressions of a very unhealthy person, and explores that to the fullest. Her desire for recognition of her talents, combined with a fear and resentment of criticism, is what forms the toxic cocktail that leads her to forge letters by famous writers. It's a way she can experience admiration and success without really exposing herself to criticism. That behavior of shutting out any possibility of reprisal extends to her personal life and relationships. This is what the film's creators choose to linger on, the motivations for Lee's behavior, and its effect on her and those she interacts with. There's again this kind of tightrope balance being expertly walked that reminds me of this line from Watchmen.
You understand, don't you?
Without condoning or condemning. I understand.
I described Catch Me If You Can as a sugary snack. Forgive Me is brain food. There are real human emotions on display in Forgive Me that Catch Me never gets close to. Director Marielle Heller grounds everything in the mundane struggles of real life. The struggle to balance passions and financial demands. The struggle to play nice with people you don't respect. The struggle to admit that it might not be everyone else who's wrong. And those are the things that'll leave a movie in the back of your mind long after it's over. Can You Ever Forgive Me is one of those movies, and that alone would make it deserving of your time. It being an uncommonly nuanced portrayal of LGBTQ+ characters, an incredibly well-told story, and a showcase for Melissa McCarthy's immense talent. Well, they're just cherries on the cake. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Leave a like if you liked it, and I want to see down in the comments whether you agree with me that Can You Ever Forgive Me is better than Catch Me If You Can, because I go back and forth on it sometimes, so it'd just be nice to hear people's thoughts on that. I feel like I've been saying this for literally months, but I think the next video will be the one about stairwells, but I just listened back to the audio on it and I fucking hate it. So maybe not, maybe some shorts that I've been kicking around for a while, but who knows. In the meantime, do check out the content from our sister channels, UDS Gaming and UDS Music. They're way more consistent and prolific, and let's be real, they make better videos than I do, so get your good UDS fix from them in the meantime, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.